quality talk shows. It's time to spread the word to friends, family, and the universe. 24 hours of music and talk. Radio without limits. That's why people keep coming back for more. That's ubnradio.com.
Hi guys, I'm Sunny Chayes, and you are with me today on Singing in the Rain. I will be your curious conversationalist for the next hour. We're going to be talking a little bit about Earth Day, as it is Earth Day, and of course I'm kind of feeling like, why can't every day be Earth Day? But before we get to David Christopher and the Holy Universe, at the end of this show, I want to bring you someone who is so special. I sort of want to call him a Renaissance man. I mean, there's so many things that he does that it was interesting to decide where we were going to go with this show and what we're going to actually talk about. His name is Sebastian Siegel, and he is a writer, author, and a social entrepreneur, which we will talk a little bit more about what that actually means. He's an actor, he's a director, he is a humanitarian, and he's an awesome human inside and out. And so I just want to bring him right on, and then we'll fill all in many more little gaps in a bit. Yay! There's a massive applause going on right now, which you can't hear.
Wow, that's quite an introduction to live up to.
Oh, I think you can handle it. So when I was playing around with all of your many pages of things and, knowing you and stuff, there's so many areas that I want to dig into. And one of the things that I appreciate about you and your and coming onto this show is I'm always looking for people who want to go as deep, we can be, as truthful as we can be, whatever our truth is at this point. It's always moving, changing, shifting, and like that. It always amazes me that people were actually imprisoned for not believing that the earth was flat. Whoa. So we're always in that earth is flat thing, I feel, and then realizing it's round, and then what? Then there are black holes, and there's all of this other stuff. So yay. So you're here to go deep with me, and I'm liking that. So let's go in. Let's talk about, there's so many fun things I want to talk about, and we're going to get to many of them. But the first thing that it really strikes me today on Earth Day is spiritual accountability. Mm-hmm. People talk about that. What does that mean? I mean, what does that mean? So what does that mean to you?
That's, I think, a great thing to bring up because the explosion of spirituality and that kind of content into popular culture from books and films and so many things online, it's everywhere. Everywhere you go, you see somebody reading something, and it's great in a lot of ways. But then I do think that we see a lot of pathological practice. So something that maybe is just up here, just in the head, but isn't being grounded or followed through in here, right? So that it's an attitude without an actual practice. I think one way that's easy to exemplify where I see where there's perhaps a deep pathology in that realm might be, let's say, with food, right? And there was a few years ago, there was this guy in the NFL, Michael Vick, who was fighting dogs, right? And I'm not for that by any means. It's an awful thing. But it picked up a lot of press and picked up a lot of critique. And people were saying, this guy is horrible and he should be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. People really coming out against this guy. Understandably.
Him so much.
And understandably. Understand it. But at the same time, a lot of these people who are saying this are eating conventionally raised cattle, are going to fast food restaurants, are going to any steak restaurant and ordering a filet and ordering a T-bone. And they are at the same time critiquing Michael Vick, right? And my mission or my statement here is not to defend Michael Vick, but it is to say that that is deeply hypocritical, right? That the dollar that goes to purchasing that steak comes from an animal that spends its entire life in a small box, that is force-fed corn, that becomes deeply ill, that then is injected to be able to sustain its life only for the purpose of giving the food.
And getting bigger and, yeah.
So that individual who's doing that is doing what Michael did in this case 10 times, 100, 1,000 times worse, is supporting the torture of these animals. And I think it's interesting with food that I don't think that the killing of food is the problem. I think it's the dissociation that we have between that. So in other words, there's an interesting, so how do you decipher, right? How do we decipher what's acceptable and what's not, right?
And what's ignorance and what's not, and what's being hypocritical and what's not.
And for us, I think personally, for each individual, what's acceptable for us, right? Is it acceptable to kill a fish for us? Okay, well, if it's acceptable to catch a fish and kill a fish, then I think then it agrees with you. Then it's okay to eat fish. If it's acceptable for us to kill a chicken, and we could do it with our own hands, then I think it's acceptable to eat it. Is it acceptable to torture that chicken before? Well, then if that's not acceptable, then we ought to only purchase chickens that are raised in wild, in the pasture. And so then it comes the same thing with mammals. So, specifically with cattle, if it is not acceptable for us, if we cannot with our own hands kill this animal, then we ought to not be eating it. We ought to not refer to this package that we get or this plate that we get at the restaurant as steak. This is a living, breathing animal. It's a mammal that gives live birth, that nurtures and nurses its young. And we ought to not support that and then critique something else. Now, granted, there's always room for improvement with all of us, and I think we've come a long way. I think we're at the height of our moral development collectively as a species. But it's just, I think it's one of those things, though, where with the mass distribution of food that we see common and that we see often.
I so appreciate you bringing all that up. And what I want to say about that, too, is there are people, I mean, even the Dalai Lama has had his challenges with being a vegetarian. And yet there was a practice for many, many years where whatever one ate, there was a ritual, there was an appreciation and honoring to take this food, even if it's plant. I mean, anything that is living, and then we take it in, sort of the honoring and the appreciation for that, bringing, continuing our life. And I think that that's a little bit missing. And I think, there are elements of that can, that the ritual, I'm like all about the ritual.
I think it's important what you're saying, the ritual. And it's interesting because I will never go out and say this to someone. And some of the people that I love that are related to me, they eat beef like no tomorrow, and they don't care where it comes from. They close their eyes to it.
Texas.
Yeah, and they don't want to talk about it at the dinner table. It's
right.
And I find that's deeply hypocritical. I'm not going to push it in their face. The awakening's got to happen from within each one of us. And I used to be this person, right? Right.
And that's the good point too, is that there is that awakening, there is that evolution that we all can have, going deeper and truer and bigger and clearer to our own truth.
About 10 years ago, I directed the first commercial, which was for Grassland Beef, this company, U.S. Wellness Meats. And I learned more in that weekend about how cattle were raised and it shocked me. And
probably more than you wanted to know.
Oh, no, I wanted to know.
Oh, you did?
100%.
Okay.
I don't go in eyes closed. I go in like, I want to be awakened. I want to be rocked.
Okay, you're good for you. Good for you, mister.
And one of the founders of that farm, John Wood, he taught me more about what it was to have this holistic farm and to care for these animals, and how they were slaughtered humanely, and how they lived with the animals, and they cared for them and raised them, and from all the animals were fed by their own mothers, the calves. And this is a way that works, right? This is a way that works. Obviously, the transition for that within food industry came because grass grows on a thin level across a broad amount of space, whereas corn grows height, so we can grow exponentially more corn than we can grass. So it comes down to profit, and this is why corn became such an inexpensive commodity for us to distribute. So we started force feeding cattle corn. But if you think about, have you ever seen a picture, right, or a video of a cow in a cornfield?
Yeah.
Never.
No.
Because cattle don't eat corn.
Exactly.
They eat it for a few days and they get really ill. So then we inject them with all these drugs to prevent that.
Yeah.
So anyways, in that weekend, I have not had beef that was not 100% grass-fed from birth to slaughter and humanely cared for. And 90% of the beef that I've had since that day has been actually from his farm, from their farm.
Nice.
Yeah, and I'm saying it's becoming now more and more.
And what is this farm? You might as well give them a plug.
Yeah, it's U.S. Wellness Meats Grassland Beef.
Okay, so people check that out for sure. And, another area that, so just kind of wrap that up, or to sort of take that into technological creativity, because I want to talk about that and intimacy. And all of that, sort of feeds in, because being intimate with our surroundings, and also really, again, the ritual or the appreciation, and sort of eating food that is near us. There's a lot of talk about locally grown, but it also works, I think, for health, because we do get food sensitivities from having strawberries all year round. We're meant to have them 2.5, maybe 10 weeks a year, right? When they're tasty and they're close and they're from Washington State or whatever. But now we can get things from Chile and whatever. So our diets and our bodies get kind of screwed up that way because it's just too much of the same and not enough variety. And also, again, the honoring and the ritual of what is true for us and really being real about that. And I think we feel better about ourselves. Like, it is easy kind of to say, well, McDonald's, I'm just going to close my eyes and I love a Big Mac. But to understand what that actually does to our body, and when we get aware of how hard our liver works and how, just different aspects of our body that we're in this time, it's like, yikes, we put pretty good gas in our cars if we still do that, by the way. But God.
The studies are phenomenal. If you look at these studies with fifth graders that have been done from kids who were eating conventionally raised red meat and conventionally raised versus vegetarian diets, and the anger and the aggression and the sadness and the emotional distraught was like 70 to 30%. So 30%. So in other words, 70% of these kids are experiencing distress, rage, aggression at 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Then they were put on a vegetarian diet. It was 50% fewer. So it jumped from 70 down to 30% just from the switch in the diet. And for sure, if I speak to someone, if someone brings it up at a table, I only speak from that self-centric place, from their perspective. So I won't bring up the spiritual and moral component of, do you want to support with your dollar the torture of this animal? No. Yeah. Because nobody wants to hear that, right? Yeah. So I'll say, listen, this thing is toxic for your liver. People want to hear that. Yes. And that's very valid as well.
And I've really, doing this show and dealing with all the different areas that I do with environment and also, even social businesses and things like that. People, like in Texas, when you talk about global warming, they don't want to hear about global warming. That's just like washes over them. But say that if you do this or that it's going to affect your crop and you're not going to make as much money and you're not going to have as much rain. Again, being very egocentric, self-centric, and it's like if it's about me, I'm going to change, or I'm going to listen to what you have to say. And so it's kind of how we are. I guess it's sort of a survival thing. We can't take care of the whole world every single day. We have to start with ourselves. And again, I think part of that is even as I have 2 kids, and I know the difference in kind of going through the process of the eating and the fashion of food in the last 25 years. It really has, just to, not sort of harp on that point, and we'll get to other stuff, but it really, there have been, what's good for you, what isn't good for you. But just the knowing that something is made with love and these kinds of things that sound very corny, but I think they actually, I believe in that. I believe in, the serving, like people talk about, well, why don't the French get fat, or this sort of thing. And a lot of it does have to do, again, I'm feeling like I'm talking a lot about ritual, but it's like the sitting down, the enjoying, the chatting, the sharing, the being peaceful when you're eating.
I'm so glad you brought that up, the why don't the French get fat. I wrote with my grandmother, Noreen Nash, and my aunt, Teresa, as well, a book called The Paris Diet. And she studied it for many, many years. And she's like going on 18, my grandmother, and she's youthful and she's vibrant. And it comes from these patterns that she wakes up early. She eats really clean. She eats oatmeal. She has one drink, but she has it every single night. She works out 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the evening. And she's had the same weight for 50 years. And so she developed this book called The Paris Diet, which then I collaborated with her on at the tail end of it. And it is very much that is, taking something that's just very simple and sticking with that. That book will be out, by the way, in 3 months.
I love that, The Paris Diet. Well, because I think, when people, I've lived in different cultures and even in our own family, we would have these long dinners, and we would just, people would be pouring the wine, and we would be having food and chatting and food and chatting, and it was so fun. It was just really, really fun. But we didn't jam food in us and run out, and I think that really has a lot to do with just the digestion and just the intake, and again, the appreciation for what's coming, and kind of giving honor to all the people that brought that food to us, the truckers and all that. I do all that stuff. But so with that, let's go into technological accountability and connection and like that, because I know you are sort of a master about that. So I want to hear what you have to say. And I also want to hear, we're going to talk about that, and I also want to talk about sweaty sex and Alan Watts. So if anybody's considering leaving this show, don't even, we're just warming up here, peeps. So, yeah, so what? There's so many fun things to talk about. So share with me what that is about. I mean, the intimacy is very kind of lost and very important. Where are we with that? How can we get it back, and let's do it in a new way, right?
In terms of technology, you mean?
Yeah. Well, let's start with that and then get more humanoid.
It's amazing, right? The capacity now of technology and connectivity that we can, on the amazing side, we can connect with anyone from across the world, whether it's someone that we went to school with many years ago or someone we don't know. We have something in common with on the other side of the world, and there's this instant capacity and availability to connect via the internet. It's spectacular.
Like George Jetson.
It's really, that's right. There are dangers to that, and I think it gives depression a new face as well. And that danger is that there is no longer this being in person and needing then to show up in person and account for all the variables that show up. So in other words, on Facebook or Instagram or what have you, it's always one removed from interpersonal connection in the way that we are always projecting an identity and a personality. And even if it's just an instant, it's still a projection, so that then we come to show our best self. We're not going to show, I wake up miserable, right? I look terrible. I'm not going to be like, hey, good morning, everybody. Nobody wants to see that, right?
Yeah.
So people
a couple people do that, but I know,
Right.
and those are the ones you defriend. But
for the most part, we put together our best face, understandably, which is how we show up in the world. It's a great thing, right? Civilization, again, putting our best forth. The danger, though, with technology and putting that forth is that we come to then interact with other avatars of our best selves, and then we come to identify with ourselves as those best avatars, as those best selves. So you'll see men and women, let's say online, putting together all these fitness pictures out there. Here's me last weekend, here's me tomorrow, here's me this morning. And it's like, okay, and then it's not always me. There is also the me that, grows hair on my legs, let's say, for a woman, that doesn't put up that picture, or the me that is depressed, or the me that is sad, or that's not putting that forth. But so many relationships across such a broad span, number of relationships, hundreds, thousands, millions for some people, are being brought in from that projection of identity.
Yeah.
Then the danger for the individual is they come to interpret their own self-worth as that identity, so that they become better at navigating relationship on a very superficial level online than they do interpersonally at a depth capacity.
Interesting.
And this is, I think, a similar thing that we see, let's say, for instance, in a relationship where a man or a woman will jump into a relationship a month or a few months again and again and again and again and again. And then when the going gets tough, they're out, right? That is saying, I want relationship. I don't want to be alone. I want it. I need it now. Okay, I have sex. We connect. This is great. Something gets really difficult. It doesn't agree with my sense of myself. I'm out of here. Now I want another relationship. And then that individual is always looking for who's the right person, right?
Yeah.
And putting it out there on the world, when obviously the thing is that it is challenging to be human. It's challenging, and there's a lot of pain with that, but accepting that pain, acknowledging that pain, being compassionate towards that struggle
and real
that challenge in ourselves and in others, then we can get into a relationship where something isn't enjoyable, and we say, look, I'm going to stay in here. Whatever the outcome is, I'm going to stay in here. I'm going to respect myself. I'm going to respect you. I'm going to love you. And I'm going to stay in it. And then that's the opportunity for intimacy. And when you brought up earlier this piece that I wrote, truthfulness is the last taboo. That last taboo is truthfulness, where it used to be nudity or sex, right? That this was something that we really want to see. Now with the internet, we can see anything that we can possibly imagine. We can see it.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's maybe okay. But to become addicted to that is not a good thing. It's a challenge for society. The new taboo is truthfulness. It's like, okay, if a woman walks in the room, I don't have a type, tall, short, black, white, Chinese, doesn't matter to me, right? Doesn't matter to me. What matters is the truthfulness, that someone's going to show up and take a risk. You know, that we're, I think, curious beings, and that people have such an easy time connecting online that it's a risk for them to connect in person, to walk by someone on the street and be like, we catch eye contact, go, hello.
You're right.
Not if I want anything, not if I want approval, not if I want to, but just hello. Just I see you. And that's powerful. And that's a risk, because we risk being rejected. We risk being, and it'll happen a lot of times in big cities like Chicago or Los Angeles or New York. People will say hello to him.
Right.
Like, I don't know you. Do I know you? I mean, but online it's like, hey, how are you? And so I think that truthfulness is the last taboo.
Well, when you're talking about truthfulness, I mean, something that I'm working with all the time right now on so many different levels, and you know, what is really the truth? And I think, I know that I cannot feel loved unless somebody really knows my truth. I am sure we're all that way. And so, because what you're saying is so true about what we put forward, it's like, okay, but if he really knew, or she really knew, or whatever, then they wouldn't really love me. So who are you really loving? You know, you're loving my facade, but I really want you somehow to love that other stuff, you know, that is just part of me, you know, but I like, I'm afraid for you to see that part, but I'm not ever going to really feel 100% loved if I don't show that part. And I want to see that part in you, and how awesome for you to trust me enough that you can let down some stuff or just whatever, and then I don't run away when you act like you don't think you should act because you think I'm not going to dig it, and then whatever. I mean, and that's why I have you in the studio. You're not Skyped in. You know, people tell me, oh, I want, no. It's so different when people are here with me. It just is. You know, we can clink glasses. We can do whatever we're going to do. But it's just a different whole vibe. You know, like I can't look into your eyes when you're on the phone, you know, and chat with you and feel when you're going to land your plane and then I'm going to start talking or whatever. But again, don't you think that's true? Like, we can't really totally feel loved if we don't feel like the person, you know, if we can't show all our stuff, right?
Yeah.
And with you find that in okay, so your movie Awakening World. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
So chat about it. So that kind of, you get into that there with some interesting
That's
chatting
a very
people.
humble film. And it's 5 questions. What's the purpose of life? What's love? What's heaven? What's hell? What's intimacy? And it's available on Amazon, and it's also exclusively through Beyond Words Publishing, which is a phenomenal company. And
yes,
they make
we
incredible
love them.
content. They make wonderful books and films. And it's interesting what an art form will do for someone. Like, somebody might go to a movie, right, like a big budget action film, and they might say, well, I really enjoyed that. And then 5 years later or 2 years later or whatever, they don't remember the thing. Or they might go to a film that maybe is a humble film that maybe they're not crazy about the watching of it, but the reaction to the film is great. And I think that reaction is the part of art that is valuable, right? And I think it's wonderful to make it aesthetically beautiful as well. Which
you do so well, by the way, in everything you do, actually.
You take cash or credit card. This film
Other
is
than your horror things that you do. Those are cool.
This film is a very humble film, but what's cool about it is the reaction that it has with people. So we screen that at LA County Probation, and we screen that at different centers to get people talking and to start a dialogue about what's really going on, what's the purpose of life, what's love, what's intimacy, what's connection. I had a friend of mine in Hawaii who went and saw the film, and he's got 3 adopted daughters, incredible guy, like macho guy, fight promoter. Went and saw my film when it showed at the Hawaii International Film Festival there. Wasn't crazy about the film. Then he called me and says, you know what, though? Thank you so much for making that movie, because when we got home, the conversation that I had with my daughters, that's the value. That's worth the price of admission, right? That it got this conversation going, what's love? What is it? What's not love? What's intimacy? You know, what is it? What are we really doing here on a day-to-day basis? That film's called Awakening World. There's trailers and previews and reviews and stuff online, and it's a cool film to check out.
Yes, you guys definitely check that out. And I'm assuming that I was seeing these amazing quotes, and a place where people are very, very disconnected is in our incarceration system, our prison system right now. And I had an amazing guest on my show about a year and a half ago who was a drug dealer, brother turned himself in, was in jail for 9 years, came out, and ended up being Michael Bernard Beckwith's kind of bodyguard and right-hand man and stuff. His name's Kane, and he has an incredible story, really great success story. But what he told me was one of the most painful and hard parts about being in jail was feeling forgotten and disconnected, and like, you know, the world was going on without him. So I want to read this one quote. I actually have a couple really cool quotes here, but one, this is from the County of LA, and it says, Mr. Siegel, your commitment in sharing with our incarcerated youth is inspiring. They were mesmerized by your stories and insightful answers. You were able to project the positive and motivating passion of self-worth and purpose of being. Of being strong characteristics, and I'm even reading my own writing here, and we seek to teach as they attempt to re-enter communities. Thank you. So, you know, like, yeah, that's really, really important stuff. And these were youth. These were, you know, kids probably 12 to 19, something like that, right?
Correct.
How great that you were able to get that in also, because it's not an easy land to navigate at all. So, you know, bless you for doing that, because these are our brothers and sisters, you know, and they're in cages, and it's, you know, we worry about animals being in cages, but we also have our brothers and sisters in cages, and I think that's...
You know, we all are in any moment and in any instant, and I think that the interest for me in intimacy started with, I think as a boy, I had a lot of intensity, and I didn't know how to ground that intensity or where to put it. And I found that while I was an athlete, I could go out and run and swim and surf and hike, and that I would get this personal sense of high and of peace. But that interpersonally, I was seeking that as well, and that I found that sports, for me, seemed to be dissociative, like football or what have you, where it was very jocular, and I was like, all right, come on in, but it was very dissociative. It was actually not connective. It was,
competitive.
Again, a projection. Not the competitive part of it is fine. And for me, I think what I was missing, longing, looking for, hoping for there that I didn't find there was that not having the projection of identity that I found in team sports, particularly at young ages. A lot of time it is this projection of identity of let's say, in a kid's football team or something like that. You got to show your best and show up in like this type of thing. Whereas I found that at 7, 8, 9 years old in theater, it was great because I could go in a room with somebody that I don't know, and then immediately I've got to unpack this character that is something maybe out of my imagination or something off the page, depending on the age and the theater and whatnot, but that it's a means by which two individuals or a group of individuals can put our own pain, joy, without any shame, without any type of filter, and be right there. That, in other words, in an instant, we can just connect instantaneously. I found that to be enormously powerful. Being between two worlds at that time, in Hawaii with my father, and then in Texas with my stepfather and my mother, there were two diametrically opposed worlds. One was like sex, drugs, and rock and roll, which was great, and the other one was discipline and work ethic, which was also great. But they were very different, and trying to go between these two worlds and kind of navigate one cohesive identity was very challenging for me, because I had to be one person in one world, and I had to be one person in a different world. And this
Did you sort of choose out or pluck out the bits that worked for you the best and kind of assimilate them into one character, or did you sort of act, you know, kind of be split personality?
It was hard, I think, to figure out, because it was kind of pre-rational cognition at that point. I didn't have a sense of self-evolving mind. Right? 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. It was just like, but I found that in theater, it was this place where I could be like, okay, I can let it all out, and I can navigate that territory and try on what feels good for me and what feels hopeful and inviting for other people as well.
Yeah.
And that thing to me was intimacy. That it's, if I'm going to show up and share something with someone and receive from someone their own thing that they want to share, the way they want to show up. And I think that that's a lot of how I forge friendships and relationships, is that I'm comfortable listening, and I'm curious about human beings, and I'm curious about that pattern of pain and of joy that exists within all of us. And I'm open to hearing that, to sharing that, to receiving that. And I think that's so important. It's such a beautiful part of being human that then opens up a grounds for great, authentic, dynamic relationship.
Absolutely. I think it's about, I mean, when you're saying this, I'm thinking of different aspects of life where even just in peaceful conflict resolution, where people really just want to be heard. It's like, okay, but you're at me, we're having this, but wait, did you hear me? Like, did you hear me? There's something that one does with little kids and babies when they're speaking, when they're first learning to speak, and it's called matching. So they'll say like, "Mama cookie," and then you say back to the child, because you want to teach them English, you'll say, "Yes, you want a cookie?" And it's just awesome because their little face lights up because they're heard, they're understood, and then maybe they actually get a cookie. But they get, they're able to have that power of having a thought, having a need, having a feeling, and then having somebody on that outside world get it. Please, people, get it. Understand me, please, people. And I think that's really when it really boils down to, even in the highest of businesses, in the in the courtroom, and anywhere where people are kind of at each other, it's like, okay, but just shh, can you just hear me? Don't you think?
Sure.
It's like, okay, that's what it really boils down to.
I think there's also one of the things that technology introduces is also a pressure to always be good news. I mean, I'm not for excuses and complaining. Definitely not interested in that, but interested in pain and interested in the plight of being human and interested in joy and humor and all those things. And obviously,
a bit of sadness.
The best humor comes from that, right?
Yeah.
Like, all the comedians think like Richard Pryor is the best because he just had the pain right there on the edge.
Yeah.
It was right there, so raw, so real. When you listen to him, you feel it. Like,
Robin
oof.
Williams.
Yeah, full on. And I think that we have, because of technology, more and more so, this pressure to just show the best with this positive environment and only be positive. Yes, it's very good to be positive and hopeful, but also to be authentic and truthful. And we have this dangerous pressure to say, well, I don't want to tell you something that I'm feeling a pain. I don't want to share it because I don't want to complain. Well, we can share pain without complaining. And I think that people feel sometimes, well, I'm sorry to be a bummer, but this happened and this happened and this happened. That's okay. There's a way to share that in a way that is that bridges people together. That can be a wonderful thing without
absolutely
without having the no outlet for it.
Well, I think it is that humility also, because I mean, even when we listen to talk shows that are so popular these days, when people come on who are whoever it is, let's just say George Clooney or whoever it is, and they come on and they say something normal, it's like, whoa, it's such a connecting thing. And people just sort of say like, yeah, I just had a baby and I went, I've been up for 5 nights, straight, and I'm stumbling in here today. So, people just feel like, yeah, I did too, or, you're a human being.
Oh, I'm drunk and stoned off of my mind. I just wandered in here off the street. You guys want to do an interview? No.
Well, there's a movie that's out right now that I really love. There are a bunch of movies, and there's one that I really love, and I highly recommend. It's a pop movie kind of, but it's called Danny Collins, and I don't know if you've seen it, but it's with Al Pacino. And he, I didn't know this bit of it, but it's not a spoiler. I mean, it's because I just didn't happen to know it. But within the first bit of the movie, he's a rock star, and his manager gives him, and this is a true story, like it chokes me up, actually, gives him a letter that John Lennon wrote to him that he did not get until like 2 years ago. And so it's like, oh my effing God, like, because he was just like on a really ridiculously destructive path. And what John Lennon said, it was a letter to him as a musician. And he actually even had his phone number on it and call me. So can you even imagine? Like, it makes me cry even talking about it, And so what the path is and what he does in this movie and stuff. But I mean, talk about the connection. And there's such beautiful, just go see it. It actually is really worth seeing. But, in what you're talking about, at any age also, it doesn't really matter. I think sometimes people sort of give up on certain things, on health, on money, on finding love, on whatever. Unfortunately, sometimes people get to a certain age and it's like, well, it just didn't happen for me. Well, I believe it can happen at any time. And see Danny Collins, and you'll see it can happen at any age. What you think can't be, can.
It's interesting, right, which brought up about this letter from John Lennon to this musician in the present, John Lennon's past, and how this impact has, right? And I felt, I think, as a kid, that I was looking to the future not just as a tomorrow and not just as a 10 years from now or 20 years from now. Yes, I certainly make choices based on those things. But also 100 and 500 years and 1,000 years. And that doesn't mean in terms of accomplishment, but it means I am a resonance, an existence, and I am a part of a chord that is perpetuating a pattern, right? So in other words, we think, people, I know some very wealthy people, they just want to make more and more money, and it's a game that they enjoy, that they love, that they're good at, and society rewards them for it, and I understand it. But the danger in it is what? Then you leave it to your kids, and do they really care? And then their kids, do they really care? And then their kids, and so what? Right? Yes. So in 100 years, in 200 years, everyone you know is going to be dead. Everyone who they know is going to be dead in 300 years. So what is really, what's really going on? Well, the only way to really live forever is to set forth a pattern of inspiring, of unlocking, of connecting with human beings,
Absolutely. And our place on the earth, like when you're talking about that with the many, many years, I know you're really familiar with this, but the Native Americans make decisions based on 7 generations. Yeah. So hey, people, again, it's not just about me, but how will this, whatever we're doing, affect 7 generations? And I think that's such a phenomenal way to live. And right? I mean, and to say that on Earth Day, I think it's an important concept. But yeah, to know that, like you say, just making a lot of money isn't always what it is. Or again, I think that we play around a lot on this show and many places about, even the meanings of words and what does the meaning of success mean. And I talk to my kids about that all the time because they're in that place. They're 19 and 25, and it's like, well, what used to mean success just flat out doesn't anymore, at least in my world. It just doesn't. I mean, it's all about following your passion, doing what you love, and perhaps the money will fall in, and it most probably will, but and it might not be huge amounts, or it might be, but I mean, what a life to live when you're really following your passions, like you do all the time. And I know that you actually have to leave us in a few minutes, and I want to read one more quote, and I also want to talk about your health because okay, go ahead.
Before we just go, I just wanted to ground, because what we were discussing was sort of ethereal. And I always want to ground it in a couple specific things,
okay,
in terms of living forever and setting that pattern. And I think it can be something, it can be things that are as simple as just showing up, really feeling like we feel, whether it's going in to get tea somewhere or connecting with someone who we know really well. A parent or a sibling can be even more challenging, because such a long pattern has already been established that it's hard sometimes to break that pattern for newness to come out.
Absolutely.
That if two people are just, hey, and then, the difference between hey and then feeling it before then responding.
Yeah.
And with people that we don't know, we catch eye contact in the street. And I did so much growing up in Hawaii, and it's an amazing place because when we walk down the street in Hawaii and people see one another, you see them, and it's like, hey, like, I'm a human being. You're a human being. I see you. That's for granted. So then a lot of times, like even moving here for me at first, it was strange that you see people, hey, and people don't say hey back.
Right.
What's going on here?
Yeah.
There's this commodity there's this commodity placed on this premium placed on influence versus humanity. And placing the premium on humanity is where the action is.
Absolutely. And what we were talking about yesterday, when we were talking about how I was so inspired around Christmas time to kind of bring it to another place, which is like, going to visit the family and being with people who are supposed to be the people who love and support you the most in the world, and that you love and support the most in the world, but often don't necessarily really know or knew them. They're 82 now or 73 or 50, but you sort of feel like, kind of how they were when they were 10 and they were like goofy, whatever, and they're still that person. It's like, let's crack that open. Let's be, who are we today? Like, we all do change. We all do have realizations, and we certainly want to give each other the permission to play in those new places. Like when we go back home and the mom is always like, well, Johnny, it's like, no, Mom, it's like, it's a whole new day. Let's have a new day. So a new year, new day, new me, new you, like, come on. So I think when that happens, the connection is so much deeper, because that calcification, that, pie crust, whatever that's kind of there that separates us, if we can crack through that a bit, don't you feel like that's the connection can be more true?
Yes, and I think an exercise for doing that might be to say, okay, whatever conversation we have, nothing's going to be off limits. Nothing. And whatever conversation we have, I might feel uncomfortable or offended, but I'm just going to observe that, and I'm going to sit with that, and I'm going to allow you to say and be open to and receptive to you in whatever you say.
Exactly.
And are you open to being receptive for me, whatever I say, no matter how, not lead it, not if I bring up something that is a soft, tender, sensitive issue from the past between siblings, between parents, between longtime friends, say, okay, anything's up, let's just have fun with it.
Yeah, and clean it up, also. It's like clean it up, and it's never too late for that. I mean, it's never too late for that. So what is the deal? Can you hang around, or do you have to leave us? You have to go. Okay, well, you have to come back.
Are we covering anything else? Or
I mean, there's so many things. There are a couple things I may read when you're gone because I'm going to be speaking. David Christopher is near us, hovering around, and we have 8 minutes with him. Okay. And I'm going to talk about a little bit more stuff, but let's just make sure that people know how to get at you to see Awakening World. And then what else do we want people to know?
Everything's on my site.
Yeah, and you have an amazing
Siegel.
site. So
Thanks.
go to, and you'll see it on my page, and you guys know how to get to me and Sebastian Siegel, and you have it written so you know how to spell it. And, next time we're going to talk about health because you are one of the most gorgeously, phenomenally, and photographed people, and you've been on, now, I think the statistic is, it's kind of wild to end with this, but that you've been on more covers than any, I love it that you're actually blushing. Like, I didn't think you could do that. Any more covers than anybody in a natural way? Is that how we put it? Like, without doing any kinds of steroids or shavings or whatever?
100% natural, yeah, that's right.
100% natural hunk. What is up with that? I love it so much. And I adore you. And I'm so, I just wanted to talk faster and get more in.
It's such a pleasure to be here.
Oh, my God, my pleasure. So come back.
Okay,
come back.
Let's do it, definitely.
And then I'm going to do some more stuff about you when you leave, but wait for me out there somewhere because I want to do that. So guys, Sebastian Siegel. Woo! We have a wild applause going on. Yahoo! Now, David, are you around us? Okay, cool. David Christopher is coming on, and I really wanted him to end the show for us today because it is Earth Day. It is Why Can't Every Day Be Earth Day is my, I'm going to write a song with that title, I think. And David wrote a beautiful book called The Holy Universe, and it's astounding. And John, should I put my headphones on so I can hear him? Okay, so I'm going old school here. And let's see, David is on our show, yes? Yes, he will be. Yay. And I love this book so much, The Holy Universe, and at some point it'll be called The Seeker and the Sage, a new story of creation for the soul, heart, soul, and spirit. It's a novel about a journey, kind of a hero's journey in an interesting way about just about a person's wanting to know, and he is the seeker, and he is very fortunate to find the most awesome sage ever on earth, I think, and the conversation and the journey that he has is really, really powerful and super important. And so I want to just bring David on, and I want to chat a little bit about. I want him to bring the love of our universe, the ritual and sacredness of our universe. So, David, are you with us?
I am. How are you, Sunny?
Yay! I'm doing great. Woohoo! So thank you so much for, I know you're doing stuff all over the place for Earth Day, and so thank you for taking this short bit of time to join us. But so you've been listening to our conversation. Is there anything you want to sort of, kind of add to that, or how would you?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry that Sebastian had to leave because the first thing he started speaking about, which was the reverence with which we raise our food, and if we decide to eat animals with which that we have that's very much in keeping with the theme of what the sage calls planetary mind. Mm-hmm. In fact, when we were speaking earlier off stage in the green room, you and I were talking about this particular piece in the book to read. It was very much what Sebastian was talking about. It's not so much that you eat meat or don't eat meat or what food you eat. It's the worldview that surrounds it. Mm-hmm. It's the idea, the way in which you approach it. So. I could just dive right into this piece and I could read it and then we can talk about that. So this particular piece talks about what's called planetary mind, which is the worldview that is now emerging out of what the sage character here calls modern mind. And it takes in a much larger view of the cosmos. So planetary mind takes issue with seeing with seeing oceans, deserts, and forests as mere resources. For it acknowledges the myriad living things in each of these ecosystems: birds, animals, fish, trees, insects, even people. All of these are expressions of the web of life. Planetary mind recognizes our complete dependence on and our interdependence with the web of life. Planetary mind would no more use the word resource to describe a tree than it would call one's mother a resource. Modern mind overconsumes because it uses words like resource. It uses words like consume in reference to the web of life. Words that belie modern mind's fundamental belief in separateness. So what's a better word than resource, said the seeker. For me, said the sage, it's the word bounty. The web of life, earth, and all the universe are sacred, worthy of respect, worthy of our reverence and our awe. The web of life, which offers its bounty to us that we might live, is deserving of our deepest respect and gratitude. But how does that work, said the seeker? Are you saying we can't cut down trees to build houses? Not at all, said the sage, nor does it mean that we cannot harvest food, farm the soil, or fish the streams and oceans. As one sage put it, to live we must daily break the body and shed the blood of the web of life.
Whoa.
What it means is this. There's one more thing that this is the one that when Sebastian was talking, it reminded me. What it means is this: when we cut down trees, fish the waters, break the soil, or kill for food, we do so reverently and with gratitude, as well as intelligently and mindfully, in ways that are in harmony with the lessons of the web of life, and in ways that help the web of life replenish itself.
Amen. And what you and I were talking about too, one of the points that I really wanted to bring forward about on this Earth Day, and again, I can't wait until we have Earth Year and then just always Earth,
Yes,
and
sir.
kind of working with the words, and I love how beautifully this is said in your bit that you read just then about that we reform the words like resources, and so it sort of dehumanizes or depersonalizes or I don't even know what this word would be. It's like
Well, the word you used earlier
honors it. Like we don't
was-
honor it. And so we just feel like we can just take plastic and just throw it somewhere because there's a somewhere to throw it. And there is no somewhere to throw it. But we just have, it's like those words, I guess, shut us down. Is that right?
Yes.
I feel like it.
It's the same as you guys were saying earlier. It's the disassociation.
Mm-hmm.
It's the disassociation, and even as you were talking earlier about just simply relationships, it's the same kind of worldview that informs how we approach our relationships with truth, with honesty, and it goes beyond just our interpersonal relationships. It's our relationships. It's our relationship with the web of life. It's our relationship with the cosmos. All of that feeds into each other. This and that's what I mean. I'm very hopeful that this new planetary mind is coming into being that the sage talks about, because you have people like who are actors and writers and social entrepreneurs talking in this way that this is not just a fancy idea. They're actually talking about it and actually living it. And that's what I find very hopeful.
Yes, and there are a couple movies that I want to talk about that I want people to see. One is called Last Hours, and this is narrated by Leonardo DiCaprio and produced and sort of organized by Tom Hartman, the great Tom Hartman. And there are 3 films out, and they're each 10 minutes, and you can see them on YouTube and go and check them out. And there's a new one that just came out, which is actually really the hope. And he told me that he wanted to get it out by Earth Day, so I'm not quite sure if it's out yet, but it'll be out in the next couple of days. There's another movie called The Salt of the Earth, which is amazing, and it is a story of, it's actually a true story of a phenomenal photographer who went all over the world for many, many years. He's very famous. Most of you, I'm sure, know him, Santiago Salgado. And I won't even go into it because we don't have the time, but please check out The Salt of the Earth. And then, David, you also love the movie, and I haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure, Love Thy Nature.
Love Thy Nature, yes.
Yeah. So these are things I feel that we can see, and of course I want you guys to get the book The Holy Universe, because it is a beautiful novel. Some people have gotten it and they sort of read bits out of it. They don't really understand it. You start at the beginning, go through, read it like a novel, and it's a beautiful journey. Very, very inspiring. It's not it's just, some things are sort of upsetting when we see these things, like the whole world is filled with tar, and it's doom and gloom. I think at this point, and David, I'm going to let you, I know we're running out of time, and so I want you to kind of end the show for us, but to the hope. And I do want to remind people that this is Singing in the Rain. This is Sunny Chayes, and we were on with Sebastian Siegel, and we have David Christopher on with us right now with The Holy Universe, phenomenal book. And so, David, I'm going to let you take us out with, I think we have like 2 minutes, John? 1 minute. Okay, so we have literally 1 minute and they'll cut us off. So
Okay.
bring it home, David.
Well, the one message for people to take away is that we belong here, that we're not fallen, we're not flawed, we're not some alien presence of Earth. We are Earth. We are Earth in the form of a human being, and we are this is just a physical fact. So that's something that you can take and begin to meditate on and bring home to your heart, really.
Thank you so much for that. Oh my gosh, that's a perfect way to end it. So until next time, guys, just remember, we do have the power of one. Please use it. Please remember and use it. Bye until next time.
Now that you've found UBN Radio and discovered our quality talk shows, it's time to spread the word to friends, family, and the universe. 24 hours of music and talk radio without limits. That's why people keep coming back for more. That's ubnradio.com.
Life is a journey, not a destination. There are no mistakes, just chances we've taken. Lay down your regrets, 'cause all we have is now. Wake up and